Now, Iran faces a dilemma whether and how to respond to Israel's retaliatory strikes this weekend, with one Revolutionary Guard commander vowing action, while President Masoud Pezeshkian says we do not seek war. He warns, though, that tensions will escalate if Israel continues its aggression, he says. Iran reports 5 people were killed in the attack on Friday night, but Israeli targets avoided nuclear sites, energy production facilities, and leadership positions. So, will Israel and Iran revert to their shadowboxing deterrent postures, or will this direct confrontation escalate? Ali Faiz is director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group, and he's joining me from Washington. Welcome back to the program. So, Ali, what is the sort of conventional wisdom, or what are the tea leaves saying from Tehran right now?
It's great to be with you again, Christian. Look, the reality is that the Islamic Republic has never been as vulnerable, maybe since the 1980s in the middle of the Iran-Iraq war. Its regional shield, Hezbollah, has been cracked. Its internal shield, which are these Russian-made air defense systems, have been completely decimated by this Israeli attack. And its sword, its ballistic missiles, have been dulled as a result of Israel's multi-layered aerial defense system. And it's now facing a bunch of really, really bad options. If you allow me to use a poker analogy to refer to the Ayatollah's calculations, I think the 3 options are either to check, to not retaliate. The concern there is that if they use this time to repair their own internal defenses and try to rehabilitate their regional allies, especially Hezbollah, it might get too late too quickly because they learned the lesson from not responding after Haniya's killing, that it only encouraged Israel to go too far too fast, especially in decapitating Hezbollah. And therefore there is concern that this would normalize attacks on Tehran and invite even more attacks if they don't respond. So the next option is to retaliate, but this time one rung higher than what they did on October 1st. But that could result in more potentially destruction on the ground in Israel and even potentially American or Israeli casualties. And then the Israeli counterstrike would be much more effective and forceful because Iranian defenses are now much more weaker. And then finally, the final option is to go all in and try to dash towards nuclear weapons. But that's also easier said than done.
Why is that easier said than done? Because your last point is what is being raised as a concern, for instance, by analysts in Washington, Americans in government and outside government, who are saying, paradoxically, this could do precisely that.
Absolutely. And I've been arguing from the beginning of this year, the more Israel succeeds in weakening Iran's regional deterrence, the more it fails by pushing Iran towards the ultimate deterrent, which are nuclear weapons. But the reason I say it's not as straightforward for the Iranians is that their nuclear program is deeply penetrated by Israeli and Western intelligence. And so if they decide to dash towards nuclear weapons, it will probably be detected, and it would in and of itself become an invitation for an attack by Israel or the United States. Also, they can reach highly enriched nuclear material. That doesn't mean they have a deliverable nuclear weapon. The weaponization process takes about 6 to 18 months, and in that period, they're vulnerable. But even if we take it to the ultimate end game, if they have nuclear weapons, this year alone, Iran has attacked both Pakistan and Israel, 2 nuclear weapon states. So that shows that conventional unconventional deterrence doesn't necessarily protect you against conventional attacks.
Indeed. So let me ask you about the United States. I want to read from one of your fellow analysts and colleagues. Vali Nasser, former State Department official, has said, you have a disconnect where the junior partner, he's actually now talking about the United States and Israel. You have a disconnect where the junior partner in the alliance has the grander vision for the region, and the senior party is left trying to respond to events. This is not a good place for the United States to be. Core to the assumption of the Israelis is that in a wider war, the United States will be doing the fighting. the United States is sleepwalking into another long-term conflict in the Middle East. So do you also see the U.S. as the wingman or the passenger right now?
I'm afraid so far this has been the case, and there is plenty of blame to put on the Biden administration for where the region is in general, with Gaza and Lebanon and now these tensions between Iran and Israel. But I think we should also give them credit that in the absence of American pressure, I think Israel would have done more, would have targeted Iranian critical infrastructure and even its nuclear program, and tensions could have escalated and spiraled out of control. Now, there is a hope that after the elections, whether Democrats win or lose, President Biden would have less to lose and would think about his legacy more, and therefore would be willing to exercise more pressure on Israel and pull the plug on this cycle of escalation, which by definition is not going to have any winners.
Do you think that in some way, given that Iran, which Israel views as its biggest threat, has been weakened, as you put it, in the region also with the Hamas, Hezbollah kind of being decapitated, do you think that there's a chance now for the United States to put even more pressure for a ceasefire in Gaza, an end of war in Lebanon? How do you see the wider situation playing out?
Look, if the U.S. is not in pursuit of maximalist objectives, and I don't believe that the Biden administration is or is engaged in daydreaming about a new order in the region, it knows the limits of American power and believes that already enough has been gained in terms of Israeli objectives that after the elections there would be space to try to turn these tactical wins into sustainable strategic wins. And that is possible now that Iran actually feels more vulnerable and is looking for an off-ramp. But again, that requires creativity and courage, which can only happen in a very short window right after the U.S. elections.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Ali Faiz, International Crisis Group from Washington.
Israel carried out a major and highly anticipated series of airstrikes against Iran in retaliation for Iran's attack on Israel earlier this month. Video from Tehran shows missiles being intercepted by anti-aircraft fire early Saturday morning. The Iranian army says 2 of its soldiers were killed in the attacks. The Israeli military said it hit, quote, precise military targets and did not include energy infrastructure. It also said that the strikes against Iran are over.
We conducted targeted and precise strikes on military targets in Iran, thwarting immediate threats to the state of Israel. The Israel Defense Forces has fulfilled its mission. If the regime in Iran were to make the mistake of beginning a new round of escalation, we will be obligated to respond.
The White House said that it was not involved with the Israeli attack and responded to the news of the strikes by urging Iran not to escalate this further. Here's part of the White House statement. The United States was not a participant in this operation. It is our aim to accelerate diplomacy and de-escalate tensions in the Middle East region. We urge Iran to cease its attacks on Israel so that this cycle of fighting can end without further escalation.